Hello, everybody. It's Gary Stuckey with Real Music. On today's episode, I've got the very talented guitar player. He's amazing. Mr. George Lynch is here of Lynch Mob. They got a brand new album coming out October 20th called Babylon. Of course, you know him from the band Dokken. And we're going to be covering those bands and so much more. I think you're going to enjoy this one. So here we go. Here he is. Here's George Lynch. So what's going on with you today?
Today, today's a lot of guitar. I got to deal with a lot of stuff with my guitar business. So I'm going to the shop, and then I need to do some running around. I'm also going down to deal with Rob over at Arcane Pickups, as we got a new pickup model coming out called the Doom pickup. That's
Cool.
modeled after my Tiger guitar. And so I'm going to go over there and talk to him about that. And then my son-in-law, Richie, will be there because Judas Priest is rehearsing there. So I'm going to hang out with them. And then I got to go to Tone Merchants and pick up a couple of amplifiers that I needed repaired. And, just boring suburban soccer mom shit.
Sure it is. It's boring.
Well,
I don't think so.
Really, it's no different than the soccer mom life. I just around, I do errands, I go do my job, I fly out, do shows, do records in my home studio, where I sit around in my sweats, and my wife bugs me to do stuff while I'm recording, and just kind of a normal life, really.
Yeah. Well, I don't see soccer moms playing guitar like that. I'm just saying, haven't seen one like, maybe somewhere. I don't want to say never,
It'd be cool. If I had a record, I'd sign that up in a second.
I like soccer. But anyway, brand new album. I was thinking now you got a new album coming out with Lynch Mob in a few weeks, and you've got a solo album out. So why did you decide to release that right after that?
Well, it's not that I decided to do that. It's just that, in the course of my life, I like recording and writing, and I just do that as a reflexive thing. And then I get these bodies of works together and do what I've done all my life, which is kind of cobble together albums, and I kind of let the chips fall where they may at that point, because I give them to a label, and then we have to decide what to do with it. But I work with different labels. So I'll do a couple of records for one label, and I'll do a couple of records for another label, and then they're both sitting on these multiple albums and trying to decide when the best time to release these that won't step on the other guy and everything. It's kind of difficult to figure that out. So sometimes you do have a couple of train wrecks, if you call it that. I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I do get releases that are consecutive or kind of on top of each other, around the same, get released around the same time.
Yeah.
It's maybe not ideal, but maybe it's not a bad thing, because, people like my music, or, maybe be aware of another record that they weren't aware of in doing something.
Sure. I know y'all released the you got a new single out, but I want to talk about the one before that. And you got a new video, I guess, or from the previous song. But your new song, was it Time After Time? I was watching that video now, and I saw the Cyndi Lauper picture in there, so I caught that. I got it.
Yeah.
Did anybody else get that? Did they understand that whole time thing?
Well, it's very Alfred Hitchcockian, isn't it? Very deep. The video works on so many different levels and reference. No, I'm kidding. But it's obviously you can't trademark a song name. So anybody can call anything. We can write a song called Stairway to Heaven if we wanted to.
Sure.
But we felt we should at least recognize the fact that we're not pretending that it was original, and making that reference. It was just kind of a spur of the moment thing. Somebody just tacked up on the wall with a piece of gum and a Sharpie, with part of the plot of the video.
Yeah, right. That was, but yeah, great acting in there. That deserves some kind of award or something. I'm just saying.
I don't like to toot my own horn, but boy, oh boy, when it's good, it's good. And, so some people are calling it, kind of a seminal, what do they call that when, things go, a paradigm shift in history, historically significant tectonic shift in
Yeah,
the world is kind of shaking in their boots right now, because so it's like kind of like what Brando did on the waterfront, you know what I mean? And just
you're right.
kind of all the rules and the molds, and I think that's what they call in this. It's because you look at it. I mean, there's surprise. Uh, there's a little physical violence where I
Yeah.
grab Gabe, pretend to grab Gabe by the lapels and shake him. Uh, there's a lot of action. I did my own running.
Oh yeah. You didn't have a stunt guy.
Well,
That's
they
good.
want I in, but I'm like Tom Cruise. I insist on doing my own stunts because I
See,
work.
that's your other talents. I'm just saying, people don't realize these things until they find out, from the video, from the interviews. But that's cool. Brand new single, "Caught Up." Now, what's this song about? Caught Up.
Well, you have to ask the singer about that, and that's the thing with all these interviews. For instance, today I'm doing interviews for 3.5 hours.
Oh,
No talk to anybody else in the band. Now, I appreciate that people think I'm in, but I can't speak for everything. I didn't write
yeah,
wrote some. I wrote a little bit, it helped, a
yeah,
little size, but I'm not the main lyricist or anything. So,
sure, sure,
singer about that. I don't know. I write. My main job is writing the music and just kind of dealing with the record as a kind of a whole project. I have to deal with that and things like
sure.
that. Mixes and arrangements to the business and everything. But um, for the most part, I usually, the singer is hopefully competent enough, or that's, part of his world, and what he does is to, he has something to say.
Yeah,
And
I get.
we had, a few writers working on this, and the band all chimed in too, and I had some contribution as well, but not a major contribution. So as far as what that means, I have no idea.
You just, you're just a guitar player. Hey, right? Nah. So
Poet.
this album, though, when you've recorded all these other albums with Lynch Mob, and do you go back and kind of listen to some of the stuff and try to uh, on purpose do something new, or do you just kind of play and see what happens? How do you come up with the whole idea for that sound that you do?
There's a running joke in the interview world about that question.
Oh,
It's yeah, it it's the lazy. Oh, I'm just having fun with you, but it is the laziest question in the world. Is like, how do you come up with your ideas? That's like the biggest joke in the industry. They never ask that question, and so when people ask it, they say it with a smirk. You know what I mean? It's usually like they laugh about it because it's just
sure,
obvious
it's
softball.
sure.
Not sure, and I'm just like, where do you come up with your
Yeah,
ideas?
right, right.
I don't mean to sound like I'm making fun of the question or anything, but because that's your question is not exactly that. It's
Yeah,
different. I forgot.
it's just you know, I was just thinking
Oh,
now.
I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we don't. Well, no, I mean there has been maybe a time or two in the 30 years plus since our first record that we've gone back and referenced the first record, sure, and because it was our most successful record and probably our best record. Um, but I would say that for Babylon, this current record, we did the exact opposite. We purposely just ignored all our past efforts and just let ourselves be, let this record be whatever it wanted to be. It was just a result of our chemistry and current just thinking and the way that we interact. And and whatever came up, and we didn't try to judge it and say, oh, this is Lynch Mob, or this doesn't sound like the first album or anything like that.
Right.
So, so because of that, the record actually sounds more like Guns N' Roses, I would say.
Oh yeah, cool. The title Babylon, always has that. I don't know. When you think of titles like that, it's got to mean something. So how'd y'all come up with a title for Babylon? Does that represent some kind of overall meaning, or how did that come to be?
Well, it's one of those titles that I just kind of thought of, and just I ran across the word. So I don't know. I can't remember how I was exposed to the word, but um, and I just I come from the old school of just like sometimes you just do things because they sound cool. Then you apply meaning to it later. Worry about that later, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, there isn't any overarching concept. It's not a concept record. It's not a political record,
Right.
over. Um, but you could devise all kinds of explanations for it. I mean, I could say that it's a reflection uh, of the political discord in the world today, and the fact that people can't communicate because they're all have different truths. Nobody can agree on a process to determine truth, and this and that, and this and that, language-based anarchy. But whatever.
Yeah,
Cool sounding name. How about?
it does sound cool though. That's the main thing. Uh, so it took a while for you to record a Lynch Mob album. So how come it took so long in between albums?
Well, I had written one about halfway. It's been, I think, 6 or 7 years since we put a record out. But about 3 or 4 years ago, or something like that, I did write what I thought was a Lynch Mob record, and I finished, writing it at my studio, and I sent it over to Oni, the singer at the time, and um, he couldn't make heads or tails of it. He couldn't. He just wasn't feeling it. Okay, well that's just Oni. So I sent it over to Andrew Freeman, who was also singing with me at you know various times on and off in Lynch Mob and other projects. And he's a good friend, and he did his best, and he made a few stabs at it and came up with a couple things which just weren't hit, weren't ringing the bell, so to speak. And he had admitted that. He goes, I'm just having a hard time with this stuff.
Right.
So I gave it one more shot, and I sent it to Joe Retta, who made a real, valiant effort to try to, uh, salvage the record. And it just wasn't there, but the writing wasn't there. It wasn't the right song. I don't want to say they were bad. They just weren't right. Um, they weren't open enough, for them to kind of do their thing and apply melodies and so forth. So, anyways,
Right.
it didn't work. So I was talking to the label guy, and I was like, man, I this is really weird. I've never been in this position where I've written a record and I failed, and I feel I just maybe need to just set this thing aside, shit can it, and start all over again, which is,
Yeah.
it was a lot of work, some expense, and really set me back. But I was just like, well, I think that's what I have to do. And then later on, he called me back and he said, hey, what about the idea of instrumentalizing it? I go, well, at first I just thought, well, that wouldn't work because it wasn't written for that,
Yeah.
bit of square peg in a round hole. And but then we had a couple more conversations, and he said, well, listen, just if you get some time, try a song, try a part of a song, just see what happens. Well, and I did, and it was surprisingly good. I thought, well, you know what, actually this is pretty cool. I didn't know if the rest of the songs would work, so I did some rejigging on the arrangements and added a few parts, and kind of worked with what I had to kind of mold it into something a little different. And then I did I instrumentalized the whole thing, and it ended up being an instrumental record, which was
Mhm.
called Seamless, from a few years ago, I guess. So that was intended to be a Lynch Mob record. So, and then of
Cool.
course, Oni was no longer, we weren't playing together anymore, and got a new bass player, and we continued to tour and everything, and we formed this new version of the band with Gabriel Colon was the singer, and Jaron Golino, which is the bass player from Hinder, and Jaron was interesting, had been sort of following the band around, and he loved Lynch Mob, and uh, kind of hooked up with Anthony and sort of mined his brain for a lot of information, and would fly out and watch our shows and just be a fly on the wall. And was introduced to him, and he's just a super sweet guy. And what this guy's coming around? It's crazy. We were pretty, I mean, he was like an understudy, self-proclaimed. Right. And then when our bass player had to go to Europe to do a tour, he was the obvious fill-in. So he stepped in, and he's been in the band ever since. And he's absolutely, you couldn't invent a more perfect human being to be in that position in a laboratory.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
And it worked in chemistry, and we're on the road, and we're sort of developing a sound and getting comfortable with each other, and we're having fun. And we thought, well, I think the time has come that we need to document this. And we did. We wrote a record, and there it is, Babylon.
Awesome. Yeah, you're talking about chemistry. There's got to be a time when you're playing and recording that you kind of hear everything come together, and it's got to be put a smile on your face, like you said, when you know that things are working out for you, recording wise. But yeah, that's got to be the best feeling ever, to hear something and it's like, yeah, this is good, man. To like your own stuff, you could have just released an album just because. Some people, I think, do. I think if you're real critical of yourself and you make the best album you can, I think that shows after you release it. I know you can tell the difference, right?
Well, that's always a balancing act. It's making the album the best it can be a never-ending project, and that you don't want to get stuck in that either. And in a way, I look at albums like you're capturing a moment in time, and for that reason, you don't really want to extend the process. But there's nothing wrong with that either if you have the funds and the time. Wicked Sensation took 1.5 years to make and cost us, a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And that was a very involved, long, lengthy, expensive process. And it shows. And we've done lots of other records. We've done the opposite, which are still good records, So I like doing them both ways, but I don't really have the patience for, a year-long album process anymore. And I've learned to work pretty efficiently, so that my kind of goal every time I work on a record is to write and record the basics for a song a day. I have to write the song, and then I have to, it needs programmed drums. I'll do scratch bass, and I do real keeper guitars, meaning I usually do the solos as well, and all the rhythms and all the extra little guitars and everything, whatever it requires. And I'll have that done by the end of the day, and I'll have the song pretty much arranged and in the can and ready to go to the drummer and the bass player and the singer. And that's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can do a little more than that. But I try to make that my goal is to write and record a song a day. And that's for economic reasons too, because they're and we need to actually, hopefully have something left over for the actual musicians and songwriters in the band after the process. It's a challenge. Right. Fun, man. I love writing. I love it. I love recording.
Sure. And whenever you're recording, like, I don't know, I always thought about solos, are a big deal to me. And I know if you're, especially like from the 80s, solos used to be this big thing. And, I don't know, the music scene kind of changed and they weren't so focused on that, but it always blew my mind to come up with these different parts for songs. how do you keep it fresh whenever you're recording a new song without, copying something else or something like that?
Well, sometimes I intentionally do not copy, but I'll do something in the style of something I've done in the past, just to keep, that's my style, and that's
Yeah,
okay. Everybody does that. And sometimes I have to intentionally do that actually, because I'll a lot of times just want to go off and do something strange or completely different because it's fun for me. But then sometimes I got to pull myself back and go, you still got to be true to the brand and kind of your legacy, and you got
yeah,
to get potatoes and this and that. So there's a balance there, but I try to achieve that balance. Is all I do is I try to make it. Well, it's still me. It's still familiar. Got my sound, got my phrasing, got my chops, whatever. But also, I'm taking chances and working outside the box a little bit. Um, and I like to have people look forward to the solos, and kind of,
sure.
what's he going to do this time? Surprise me. And that's challenging for me, but super, super fun.
Yeah,
And on my toes, and keeps the listener on their toes, and makes listening to their song hopefully more gratifying, where they get little, they go, oh, it's going to be cool. I see what George does here. And yeah, sometimes maybe I don't hit it all the time. It's not always a home run, but they're always different.
yeah,
And, uh, you know, uh, it's not like I'm out there trying to prove that I can, you know, do whatever. I'm just trying to really make a solo that's that fits with the song. I mean, that's the overarching kind of point, is when you're working, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do something abstract. I'm going to do something that serves the song, and is like a little song within a song. Hopefully, it's kind of the idea. So I like the solos to be able to be sort of appreciated even out of context, just on with their own, on their own, even outside the song itself. Just like, wow, this is cool. Um,
right,
looking forward.
sure. Um, would you say over the years, though, back in the Dokken days, would you say that your style has changed from that time, or have you tried to stay close to that sound? I mean, I know time does change a lot of stuff, but would you say that you've kept that same kind of feel and sound and everything, or you just adapted to the changes? And
But probably, well, no, I've always been kind of going for the same thing. It's just, I've just found different ways to get there and landed in different places. But I'm still, I try to be honest with my playing, and back in the '80s, I was a little less honest. In other words, I do a lot of punching in. I'd use a lot of processing. There's nothing wrong with any of that,
yeah,
but just for my own heart, I feel I had something to prove, to be more purist, and so I try to do that. Um, Happening in recent decades, and also I wasn't really happy with my sound back then. I achieved it by throwing everything but the kitchen sink into the mix. So I'd use every freaking machine in these studios to get what I needed to get. I'd spend hours, dialing in the tone and trying this and trying that with the engineer and producer, whatever, and plugging everything in but the kitchen sink. As I said, we had all kinds of ways to get different sounds. But what I never got back then, I didn't think, was really like just a pure, honest, hands and heart to ears kind of, through a very kind of transparent amp like a Plexi or something simple, and just plug in and play and just be sort of a direct conduit from my brain to the listener's ear.
right, right,
Myself, I wanted a sound that was more organic, because that's what I grew up with, listening to in the '60s and late '60s and all through the '70s, all my
sure,
heroes. So I wanted to get closer to that, and that's what I've been trying to do, and I think I've achieved to a certain extent. Um, but now that I've done that, people are like, "Oh, why don't you go back to that '80s sound? We had all that harmony,
yeah,
delay, processing, and EQ, and this and that, and this and that, microphones, and 6 different amps."
right.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet. Um,
Occasionally, I do plug into something like that. I'm actually building an '80s rack rig right now. That's kind of a
oh,
slow
cool.
process. But out when I'm out and about, I have an opportunity to play through something very heavily distorted and processed, more like I used to play through. Man, it's cool. And I
Yeah.
think I've been thinking lately too, maybe I need to. In fact, I just had this conversation a couple of days ago. We were out on the road doing shows, and we were talking about that a little bit about maybe I need to try to kind of go back to that a little bit because even though it may not be my ideal tone, it's what made me known.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's right. Um, and talking about those days back in the day with Dokken, I guess it was a different world back then as opposed to now. You got more opportunity to be freer, I guess, with your playing, maybe in a different atmosphere, right? That's probably a big difference, right?
Yeah, less focused and more, I basically don't. There's no rules because I'm
Yeah,
building my hands, and I've done records that are way left to center for my fan base. Like Project Infidelica and Smoke This,
yeah,
the and which people have pretty much rejected, but I think they're beautiful, valid efforts, and I stand by them. But yeah, I have that flexibility, afforded to me to be able to because I have a little bit of a name, I can doors open, for me that wouldn't normally be open, and I can play with people like Corey Glover and Angela Moore and you know uh, Doug Pinnick and Ray Lazier and all these other guys that I do projects with, Michael Sweet and this and that. You know, it's awesome. I
yeah,
really enjoy the journey, and why uh, I have one life to live, so might as well make the best of it, and follow up on these opportunities that are in some ways challenging, which is cool. I like to challenge myself and open myself up to different styles, and instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. That doesn't sound very fun.
sure. Um, I know that when the album comes out in a couple of weeks, I know that Dokken has got a new album coming out. That's got to help fans get excited about that, kind of nostalgic feeling of everybody. What's your relationship with him lately?
Oh, we have a great relationship. We're fine. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the past, of course, everybody knows about. I guess it cares to pay attention to that, but that's extremely old news.
Yeah,
Been the case in long, long time. So no, we're fine. I mean, we're both older guys and been through a lot together and achieved a lot together, both together and independent of each other. So there's really nothing hard feelings or anything at this point. It's just we do shows together, which is fine. We play together quite often actually, and um, and I think it's interesting. Yeah, that records are coming out, videos coming out at the same time because I mean, we're entertainment when it really comes down to it, and
right.
but at the end of the day, if it's a circus show, it's a circus show. Whatever in the door to pay attention, So
Yeah,
there's a
right.
little bit of a thing there between us, and we can work off that, and people can
Yeah,
compare to, the albums and all that, and that's healthy. I think there's nothing wrong.
that's good though that people can get past all that. I was talking to Jeff Pilson about you know those days, and he said the egos were the downfall to those days. So, would you agree with that?
Oh, ooh, I wouldn't say egos plural. No,
You would say ego.
but listen, everybody has an ego. Ego's a strange word. It can mean a lot of
Yeah,
different. There's just like a blanket word. It means I don't know exactly what. I think I think I know what he means by that. But uh, yeah, without going driving down that rabbit hole, I would say
yeah,
that I think some of us were had the best interests of everybody at heart, and some of us, or less than some of us, had the interests of just themselves uh, at heart. So that was really the struggle.
Right. So do you, as your band, Lynch Mob, when you approaching a band, I guess you're approaching it differently than say that band would be, and that probably helps the band overall when you have a different attitude about it, I guess you could say, right?
Well, I mean, my lesson from Dokken, and even before the Dokken days, was one for all for one. It was all about the democracy of rock and roll. You know, we all work hard, we struggle together, we come up, we achieve something, and we all benefit equally. I know, but I did learn a very hard lesson post Dokken years when I put together my band based on that philosophy and gave everybody equal share and equal power and equal money, and it was a failure.
Mm.
And just because people are not built equal, and you need somebody in control. You need somebody, calling the shots, and I just think the man-made hierarchy should mimic the natural hierarchy. There is a natural hierarchy with people, but the problems occur, I think, when people try to uh, uh, sort of get out of bounds of the natural order. in other words, let's say for an example, you have a bass player that's, he's a bass player. Bass players, they play one or maybe two of the four strings on their bass, and they're not writing songs, and they're not really the motive force behind the band. Let's say in some instances, I'm not saying all instances,
Yeah.
but I'm just citing just a generic example. Could be a drummer, could be a guitar player, could be a singer. But
Right.
anyways, so this person, gets decides that because of their maybe lower position in the creative part and the earnings part and all the other things, the attention part, that they feel that they need to overcompensate, and they want to control everything, and they want to do this, and they force bad songs on you and bad decisions, and I think that's what Jeff is referring to when he's talking about ego, and that can be damaging. So what I thought the answer to that was you give everybody an equal cut, and then it not only it rewards people for not forcing their bad ideas on you. That was the
Right.
idea. It didn't work out that way, and I learned that lesson. So now I realize that in life, a pure socialist democracy doesn't really work in the real world. You need some constraints and restraints. So, um, you need rewards, but you also need uh, an order. You need order. You can't just have chaos. That doesn't
Right.
work.
Communication is good too, right? And understanding each other would probably
Like,
help, I'm guessing.
to really get down to it, the most fundamental thing is trying to work with good people that you love and you trust and that are honest as a human can be, um, and trusting each other, just like a relationship, a marriage. You know, it's really about trust, and we did not have that in the early Lynch mob, and we do have that now,
That's
uh,
good.
and I think that's a beautiful thing. I would trade the lack of quote unquote success for the honesty and the love that I have with this present iteration of the band. I would take that over, the millions of dollars and all the big time, ritz and glamour of the 1989 1990 Lynch Mob.
Wow. That says a
Fabulous
lot. Yeah.
bullshit. It was just so. Um, yeah. You learn. Yeah. Being in a band is like a laboratory for just human nature, like a lot of things. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've got a band that you're happy with. You got great songs. I know the album's going to be great. I'm looking forward to hearing that album. What about you? Got shows coming up, right? You've been on tour and everything. Got some shows very soon, right?
Yeah, we tour kind of regularly, we pretty consistently. So yeah, we just got back from a run. We're going back out here, coming up here a little bit, going to Florida, I believe. Um, yeah, yeah. So we try to stay busy. This is Lynch Mob is my touring band. really tour with the other projects that I record with.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you talking to me today. I know you're a busy guy. You know, you got all this soccer mom stuff that you got to do too, right? So I don't want to keep you or anything.
Yeah, the cat threw up on the rug. I got to take it
See?
over to the cleaners.
See, that's going to be the headline in all the magazines.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Yeah. All right, buddy. Well,
Thanks,
thank
man.
you. Next one, I got 6 of these today, so I gotta
Oh,
keep them up.
got to keep them going. Thanks, man. Have a good day.
You take care. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to another episode of Real Music. To find out more about Lynch Mob and George Lynch, head on over to his website, georgelynch.com. And until next time, everybody, keep the music real.